Let's shift across to extension. You came second in the state in that. A lot of people struggle with section 1 because it's very vague, and I think the description of it in itself is quite nebulous. What did you make of it? How did you prepare for section 1 of the extension 1 paper?
Extension 1 is really hard to prepare for, to be honest. A lot of the work that goes into section 1.
And it's a little bit like, I always say, sorry to cut you off, I always say it's a little bit like the craft of writing, but it could be different depending on what it is, because it could be a critical response, which is kind of like a reflection, but it could have that imaginative component, which makes it a little bit like craft, where you base it off a couple of texts that are kind of like from comprehension, like an unseen text. So it's this weird amalgamation of components, isn't it?
Section 1 is a lot about how well you can just read a text and then interpret it. So reading is really important for that. Another thing that I would say is, again, the overstudying thing. I didn't do that in extension 1, and I think that's why I went well, is because especially for section 1, you can do so many practices and come up with your own things that you think you're going to write, and then the question is completely different, and it asks you to do something completely different. And so with extension 1, my philosophy is just have fun with it, with the section 1, it was kind of just read and get a good understanding of how a text works and how it functions, and have an understanding of the theory behind it, and then just write whatever you want, kind of thing.
Yeah, look, I think that's great advice. And I think you're probably a more gifted writer, which makes that approach actually the correct one for you. But if you were to give a really specific regime to someone, based on your experience of doing it, what would be a couple of the components?
Yeah, the rubric's super important, just using rubric language. A lot of it is being able to read a text and understand both the text and its context. So a lot of the stuff that I did extension 2 English as well, so that helped kind of giving me an understanding of the literary timeline and what certain texts look like on that literary timeline. The way that I would respond to a romanticism text is different to how I'd respond to one dealing with modernism.
Yes, and I think that's definitely a go-to thing. I was just going to say, some people might be listening and be like, oh my God, I have to recognize the composer. Do you think it's essential to do well, to be familiar with, the form and the context of the piece? Or is it possible to just kind of look at it at face value and just try and emulate or identify, first of all, the stylistic elements in it, and then just emulate those and practice that? Do you think that would be enough, or you need to have some background knowledge of the types of writing?
Oh yeah, that would definitely be enough if you're good at it. If you can deconstruct a text stylistically. But I think with that knowledge, even if you just have a little bit of knowledge, it can give you, first and foremost, just the confidence to know that what you're saying is backed up by the fact that you're coming at basically the knowledge that what you're saying is right. If you see a modernist text and you think it's about I don't know, death, then you're okay, I'm right. I can go ahead and write that. It can allow you to create a more in-depth argument if you link it to context. It's just that extra level of analysis beyond the textual sort of stylistic breakdown.